Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and supported ministries and or nonprofits. Some of this content may be adult in nature, so please use discretion while watching with your children.
Hey guys, talking here to Leighton Flatt. He does entertainment, different kinds, and mostly it's comedy. How old are you?
So that's funny that you ask that. I ask every city we go to, every stage I'm on, I ask the crowd, how old do I look? The average age I get is I look 35. I don't know what you think. I'm 22.
Holy cow, I was going to say 28 to 30.
Yeah, I get it all the time.
The scruffy beard.
The beard, the height, the tattoos.
22?
22, I turned 23 this year.
You're younger than my kid, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I found out the average age difference between me and the comedians I work with is about 10 years.
So why, you come across mature, you come across seasoned, you look ready. You don't look unaware. How did that happen?
I was raised in a very Christian home. My dad was an old hippie, and my mom was a rebellious military kid. And so I think they had learned their lessons. I was a baby of 4, so by the time they got to me, I was raised pretty strict. And then when I was a kid, I got diagnosed with OCD disorder. And so basically what that meant for me was I had this really big weird thing with black and white, good and bad. And so I was always raised trying to do my best to be good. And so I think that kind of pushed me to always be kind of a squeaky clean kind of guy. And then through Christianity, I always just was lucky enough to kind of turn away all these things. And it made me into a kind of I don't know. I always give it up to Christianity and my parents giving me a decent upbringing to make me an adult that could function.
That's all I can do to keep him busy.
I know who it is. It's Benjamin and Jechaliah's family. When you count who they married their children up to, that makes for 13.
No, it's not them, but you have the number right.
Reuben, Levi, what are you two doing here?
We came to get some water. John offered us some water, and he's getting ready to pour some water so we can take some water back to our house.
Well, here, let me help you with that.
Da 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 da.
Well, everybody, the true Easter Bunny is getting ready. Now you know the mystery. How to get into your bunny suit. Stick your leg in, you put your right foot in, you put your right foot out. Shake it all out. There's a big stuffing for the belly and one for the rear end. Now the bunny gets stripped. I think you can stop the part. It's made for people smaller than me. About 5'8" for the ideal height. I'm 6'1". You zip up the back like this, and then you go like this. Like this. No. Okay, you stick your arms in here, then you do this. I've done this before. It's like zipping up. Ladies, have you ever zipped up your own dress? Hard. It is hard. Okay, what do you think? How are those ears? They're standing up. Hi, everybody! I'm going to go get the Easter eggs and hide the eggs. Oh. I'm going to go get the Easter eggs and hide the eggs. Oh, watch me do this. Watch me work. Woo!
Watch me do this. Watch me work. Woo!
I laid the eggs last night. I'm a freak of nature. It continues. Among the flowers.
do this. Watch me work. Woo-hoo.
Watch me work.
I gotta incubate the eggs. Ah, okay, bye-bye.
Johnny Rooster here with our candidate for mayor. This is Marcus Aton. You've been going through a lot of stuff, getting ready for your first election. It's kind of fun.
It's kind of wild.
Stressful. How would you describe it?
It's really nothing like you'd ever expect. I always thought that politics was very much just, I don't know, behind closed doors. You would meet with people, you'd try to work out what would be a good solution to a problem. And I never really realized how much effort goes into it behind the scenes. And there's just like a huge learning curve that as a new person to politics I had to go through, because I had to talk to people and figure out, you know, what are the issues.
Well, I think it's interesting because I've never run for a public office either, and I bet you most people watching this haven't. So what is it like behind the scenes? This is kind of our sneak preview, guys. Yeah. And this is airing on Monday, so tomorrow is election day. So a big day for you, right? And I know that you're up against this the current mayor, so there's a lot of momentum there.
Yeah.
But what that behind the scenes, what does it look like instead of what you thought it was? What is it really like?
It's just a lot of conversations and learning that there are people who come from all kinds of different political backgrounds, and sometimes you think you know what kind of party affiliation someone has, but I've seen so many different like exceptions and weird like combinations of beliefs and issues that anymore I feel like it's actually very difficult for me to tell what someone's affiliation is until I hear enough issues that I'm like, okay, I can tell you're right or left or center. But it's basically just having as many conversations with like real voters as you can, and people will bring up issues that you've never heard about before, and they want to know then how you're going to address those issues. And so you have to, if you don't know, you have to just simply tell them, I've never heard about this issue, I'm going to have to research it.
Right.
And so it's just becoming familiar with what most people are, you know, concerned about, and you learn something new almost every time you talk to people. And after you know, a few months of trying to be, you know, this candidate and running for office, you have to just at some point decide, I've heard enough opinions, I've seen enough of what's going on, that I can recognize that there's this range of issues that kind of, it's like this Venn diagram of what like crosses, you know, the spectrum of beliefs, and you have to address what will, you know, satisfy the most people. Because if you try to satisfy people too far to the right or too far to the left, then you alienate everyone else. Generally speaking, the issues that are universal to everyone are crime and like schools. So we have been, it's surprising because I grew up here in Springfield and I think of it as being a very, you know, family-friendly city. But statistically we're actually not. We're the 5th most dangerous city per capita currently, and so that's one way where they've not really been listening to the people. And I mean, crime and property crime and break-ins, those are apparently very, very common across the entire city, and it's just not really been something that the council's been able to like work with the police and the city government to just get a handle on. The other issue that a lot of people have been, I don't know, paying attention to lately is development, because Springfield has filled in enough of the empty lots around town that we're starting to build up.
Yes.
And in some cases, the neighborhood is not really, you know, happy about that. And I think what's really missing there is the city council kind of needs to just communicate better to the city and let them know where we're going to try to incentivize development and when is it going to come. If neighborhoods, and especially for single-family homes, if they have a better sense of how far out development is from encroaching on, you know, their part of town, I think that gives them a better sense of, like, you know, security And I mean, that's really what we're supposed to do. Government is supposed to be a way of creating, you know, a stable life, and you do that by providing consistent and fair regulation.
Well, consistent and fair to whom? I guess to the most people.
Well, to the most people.
Yeah,
you can
somebody's
never,
always going to be
right. You can never satisfy everyone, and that it sometimes can be difficult because people feel very passionate about some of their issues, but.
Anybody that's been on a school playground would know that we all just can't get along. It doesn't always work perfectly, so somebody's going to have an issue that they don't find satisfactory out there.
Yeah, but then kind of like on the playground, when you do have a scuffle, it also at some point, you know, people get over it and they can sit in the classroom again, and, you know, they can move about their life, and then at some point, the next recess, maybe they'll be able to get along again. It's just, issues are very, like, I don't know, they're short-lived a lot of times, and so after they get addressed, then something else becomes the focus.
Right.
City Council kind of needs to just communicate better to the city and let them know where we're going to try to incentivize development and when is it going to come. If neighborhoods, and especially for single-family homes, if they have a better sense of how far out development is from encroaching on, you know, their part of town, I think that gives them a better sense of, like, you know, security. And I mean, that's really what we're supposed to do. Government is supposed to be a way of creating, you know, a stable life, and you do that by providing consistent and fair regulation.
Well, consistent and fair to whom? I guess to the most people.
Well, to the most people.
Yeah, because
you can
somebody's always going to be
right. You can never satisfy everyone, and that it sometimes can be difficult because people feel very passionate about some of their issues. But
anybody that's been on a school playground would know that we all just can't get along. It doesn't always work perfectly, so somebody's going to have an issue that they don't find satisfactory out there.
Yeah, but then kind of like on the playground, when you do have a scuffle, it also at some point, you know, people get over it and they can sit in the classroom again, and, you know, they can move about their life, and then at some point, the next recess, maybe they'll be able to get along again. It's just, issues are very, like, I don't know, they're short-lived a lot of times, and so after they get addressed, then something else becomes the focus.
Right. It seems like the public's opinion comes and goes with whims now, and especially in our culture. I found out, as somebody that I've formerly been in the news media before the internet, so this is the Wayback Machine, but then currently society's really dictated about how sensational can I get on social media or some other platform and really yell about something, whether it's true or not. It's just getting attention. That really convolutes the whole playing field.
Yeah.
Really mixes up the
digital world is really interesting because I remember in 7th grade I had a keyboarding class, and we were being taught, you know, how to follow along, and that was before social media, that was before really the internet was like really available, and I kept asking myself, why do I need these skills?
Yeah.
But I guess fast forward a few years, and then like social media started coming out, and at first it really was a really cool way to just stay in touch with your friends. But as the presence of social media and the internet just kept growing and growing, at some point it actually started to become a bad thing. And I actually had an experience where I was a little too honest about how I felt about a situation in my high school. And so the person who shouldn't have read it saw it, and I don't know. So anyway, we go on, and today I think one of the problems we do have in society is that social media and just like the digital world that we've created is actually kind of separating us.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to this place where, especially on like Instagram and other platforms, there's this pressure to present yourself a certain way and show that
they're selling is what they're doing.
You're selling your idealized
these platforms
life.
are designed for sales, but most people use them as semi-weapons. Gathering likes, gathering favor, competition mode, and it looks really miserable for people that are trying to compete in that sense.
Yeah, and especially like in schools, I think it'd be good if we could try to get people more into like the real world and less like in their computers. I had a conversation with a guy who's in charge of like the Southwest region of Boy Scouts.
Okay.
And he said something really interesting to me that I thought kind of addresses like this digital world and like the pressures that social media can put on people.
Right.
He said that a lot of people in high school or elementary school, they play some sort of sport. And he said what's different about sports and Boy Scouts is that sports is very much, or it can be, like a babysitter. You drop off the kids, they play their game, and then you pick them up. And what he thinks is so important, especially today, and I really agree with this, is the relationship between the parent and the child. And with Boy Scouts, whether you're a boy or a girl, you can participate in that. And they really emphasize the value of having the parent involved in the activities. And I'd like to see a little bit more of that, because like in the Ozarks, we're known for our Midwestern hospitality, and I think that's a part of our identity.
A scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you right now?
Interesting question. So 10 is being super nervous?
Yeah.
And 1 is doing something like just at home alone?
Yeah.
Maybe a 3 or a 4.
That's good. Had a gal in this setting, she was a 10. At the end of the session, she was having suggestions on how to dunk me in a dunking booth. She totally opened up in a better way. But it was in a group. You're one-on-one. You're in front of a camera, and most of the time people lock up or they get a little nervous. I got to point out a personal reference. You're in front of the courthouse. The wind blew away your notes. I grabbed them and handed them back to you.
Yeah.
Well, that was a weird moment because you blanked out right at that moment.
Right.
Well, big deal. Everybody blanks out. And you happen to be the guy that did it. So your brother comes up a little more eloquent. You came up a little more choppy. How did the media treat you with that?
So that particular moment was, for me, kind of a high pressure thing, because I used to not be very comfortable talking to people in, I don't know, any kind of like a professional setting, or if it was anything beyond just personal, I felt like there was pressure to somehow perform.
Yeah.
And I got over that by attending enough networking events, and there was this great group called Toastmasters, and I was in that for a few years, and that was really helpful for me.
Well, Marcus, how old are you?
I will be 33 in a few days.
Well, happy birthday. When's the birthday?
April 4th.
I was going to say if it was April 6th, that would be ironic.
That would have been funny.
So this year, your birthday's on Easter.
That's right.
I remember our Lord and Savior, Resurrection. It's a really big holiday. Last year, COVID stole that from Christians as far as we couldn't go out to church for the first time in my life. I didn't go to a service on Easter, and so were so many of us wondering about that. What's your take on COVID and how we're getting out of this phase? Can we get it over with, or do we have to take certain precautions? Do we taper off? How do we handle this?
Well, I mean, the vaccinations are going out pretty quickly, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like everyone that I talk to that's really concerned about it, they're all saying, that their hopes are all pinned on the vaccines.
Really?
But I agree, like, last year, that was, for a lot of people, kind of jarring to find out that you could not go to church. And that's honestly like one of the motivations that like brought my brother and I into this campaign, is the inconsistencies that we saw, how the city council was choosing who could or couldn't be open.
Yeah.
And we thought it wasn't quite fair when we saw that all of the biggest box stores were always open.
Yeah.
And so it's just an example of how government's supposed to be about fairness and consistency, so that was neither fair nor consistent.
Your birthday's on Easter.
That's right.
I remember our Lord and Savior, Resurrection. It's a really big holiday. Last year, COVID stole that from Christians as far as we couldn't go out to church for the first time in my life. I didn't go to a service on Easter, and so were so many of us wondering about that. What's your take on COVID and how we're getting out of this phase? Can we get it over with, or do we have to take certain precautions? Do we taper off? How do we handle this?
Well, I mean, the vaccinations are going out pretty quickly, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like everyone that I talk to that's really concerned about it, they're all saying, that their hopes are all pinned on the vaccines.
Really?
But I agree, like, last year, that was for a lot of people kind of jarring to find out that you could not go to church, and that's honestly like one of the motivations that like brought my brother and I into this campaign, is the inconsistencies that we saw, how the city council was choosing who could or couldn't be open.
Yeah.
And we thought it wasn't quite fair when we saw that all of the biggest box stores were always open.
Yeah.
And so it's just an example of how government's supposed to be about fairness and consistency, so that was neither fair nor consistent.
What brought you to the place where you wanted to run for mayor?
There are a lot of things, honestly.
Was there one event or a situation, or was it other people encouragement?
It was kind of, it was just a lot of things. Like, I consider myself a very much like, live and let live kind of person. And I was never political, but
Most people.
Yeah. But over the last several years, I had just found that more and more people were getting really divisive, and more, even like within my own friend group, people were losing tolerance for each other. And that just came for myself and for my brother, that came to a head then during COVID, when politics just even like entered our own lives, and I was told that I couldn't work, and then like we found out that like some people like couldn't go to their church, and then other people's businesses were just told that they couldn't operate.
They were non-essential, and we think, what kind of business operator would be in business to be non-essential?
And what was so disappointing about it all is like it was all talked about as though it was a healthcare issue, but rather than address the health care side of what was going on, I felt like so much of the emphasis was on who was or was not open. And
if it was so health conscious, why are the big box stores still operating and the little guys not?
Yeah, and the city was actually sending police officers to check on businesses if they were open. And so it just...
What a sad assignment for a police officer to have to endure that.
Yeah, and so I don't fault the police for that, but I do fault the leadership of the city for that. And if we're supposed to be keeping people safe, then let's prioritize that. And we're already short-staffed with our police, and I just don't feel like that was probably the most appropriate way to, use them in a healthcare crisis.
First thing publicly you'd do if you're elected mayor?
Wow. The first thing I'd really like to do, the first thing I'd really like to do is meet with the current council member, or the current council members that are going to still be on there, and get to meet with the police chief and talk about what we can do to get them the support that they need, so that way they can fill these vacant spots. We can see if we can't try to curb the property crime we have, and I'd really like to see us, have a crime rate that goes down.
Wouldn't that be nice to have it tick down?
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. So what's the discrepancy in the police force? Well, how short are they? Or do they have numbers like that?
Yeah, so I've heard between 40 and 60 officers, so it's hard to say.
Is there a budget issue going on, or is it something bigger?
It's partially a budget issue because the Springfield police, they have salaries that are not too terribly different from what you could get if you go to one of the surrounding towns. And Springfield has a lot more work.
So they should have a higher income because they have more work.
Right. And what they were pointing out to me and my brother is that we are the third largest city, but we only have the 10th highest pay in the state.
For the city employees? Is that
for the police.
For the police. So 10th highest in the third largest city.
Right. And so we'd like to see that bring that pay a little bit closer to the.
Where would that money come from? Taxes, of course. Would taxes go up because we're trying to help the police, or how would we accommodate that?
I think simply
because we want more police protection and we don't want higher taxes. How are we going to do it?
I think there's actually a lot of just reallotment of funds.
Okay.
The city's already looking at spending nearly $500,000 on technology to listen for gunshots. So that was going to be a subscription model for 3 years. And it was just going to be a very expensive
$500,000.
Yeah.
To listen for gunshots, technology in place to hear the sound of gunshots.
Right.
And then that would be more of a safety remedy.
the way they talk about it is they say that when you have that technology, it's easier for you to like arrive on the scene, but I don't feel like for that money we
Johnny Rooster, this is a face palm. That's what this is. Okay, that's a 3-year subscription. The city already applied for it.
They were discussing it.
Okay, so you're definitely saying that's not the best use of that $500,000.
I mean, if we. I think there's a context when it could make sense.
Hire 3 good dogs.
It's not. Yeah,
I can hear it.
Yeah, it's. Okay, I don't think that should be our priority.
Poking a little at that one because that doesn't look like a real good use of the budget.
Right. So that's a really easy first one. I'd say okay, if we're looking at already increasing, our spend for the police there, let's just put it in a different way. Let's put it into the people rather than into technology.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Is there another glaring issue that might be addressed on the budget? That looks like a really, I mean, there it is, $500,000.
I mean, yeah, just like that, we have 500. But the other thing is simply like, we have a lot of tax incentives that we as a city give out to people, whether they're corporations or developers, and some use cases make more sense than others. And I harp on this one example just because I think it's so ironic, but during the lockdown last year, when the city council decided who was and was not essential, they also signed off on giving $4.8 million to a $1 billion corporation in the form of like tax write-offs, and they repaved a road and they moved city utilities, services, and there's almost no like local business that's ever going to get that kind of support from the city, and so why are we doing that for people who don't even live here?
Makes sense. I don't understand it either. Oh, and the other thing and whirling around in my head is, if you're on city council, how many people are on the council in Springfield?
There are 9 people. There are 5 people who represent the entire city, and then there are 4 who represent a specific quadrant.
So out of those 9, how many seats are open for this election tomorrow?
So every 2 years we elect 5 people, the mayor and then 4 council members.
Okay, so this is mayor and 4 council members time. 4 out of 9, that's a pretty significant change possibility.
5 out of 9.
Okay, because the mayor.
Right.
So 5 out of 9, are they all seeking re-election, or are they out and you got to get new people? How does that work?
So 4 of them are, 1 of them's not, I think.
4 of them are seeking re-election?
So seat A is Jan Fisk, she's not running again. Seat B is Hosmer, he is running for re-election. The mayor is running for re-election. Zone 4 is running for re-election. Zone 1 is not running for re-election.
So Zone 1 will be new regardless. So
Zone
A is for the whole city.
Seat A and Zone 1, those incumbents are simply stepping down, and so it's just whichever newcomer gets it.
So Seat A will represent the entire city.
Right.
And that one is 2 candidates?
There's 4.
4 for that seat. And then on Zone 1, there's 2 candidates.
Right.
One of those was on my show.
Yeah.
So Angela Romine.
Romine. She's nice.
Yeah. So I appreciate moving towards the people that I want to see in office. That's why you're sitting here.
Yeah. Well,
make no bones about it, Ken McClure. You're a nice guy, but I'd rather see this guy in your seat. So this is why. Because many of us, not only do we not feel heard, we don't feel like the representation, if they did hear us, would act according to our desires. Now, I can't speak for you because I'm not a resident of the city of Springfield, but I do business here 5 days a week. I am also impacted by the decisions that are made by the city council. That's why I really like having you here, Marcus, because you're helping me understand, okay, this is kind of where we are. This is what we can work on. There's some budget things. There's some police things. There's protection. There's small businesses. That's really where it hits home for me, because my show highlights and features growing the fan base of a small business. That is the lifeblood of what I do. If a small business culture is eroded and it's only big box stores, I'm out of business.
Right.
My catering is to small business, but even if it wasn't, our lives are better when small business entrepreneurs make their way in life, start their own, and make it good. The reason America is great is because it's founded on this capitalist idea of doing your best and helping others. small businesses aren't there to take from a community. They're absolutely there to give to a community.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes large corporations pop in a community, but they're not connected in the same way, and they don't have the same vibe for that culture.
Right.
And they're just in there for a profit.
Yeah, and especially with like business ownership, that's one of the best ways that you can support a middle class in a city. And if you only have corporations and you only have, you know, corporate jobs, and the bigger the corporations get, they just naturally start to, you know, value profit over money. Profit over people.
Yeah.
And there comes a point where that becomes, you know, not that great.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I agree. Like smaller business, local business, that's more about, you know, belonging to the city.
Right. So do you get to vote for yourself?
Yeah, I do.
And the other question is, how much money do you make as mayor?
Oh, $200 a month.
Woohoo! You're gonna get rich.
Oh yes.
What else do you do? Because you can't live on $200.
No, you can't.
What do you do to survive?
So I do freelance marketing, and then I also have been working at a bakery.
If you don't win the election, what will you do? Differently. What will you do differently?
Politically, my brother and I have already been talking about what we would do if we didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have ideas, but nothing is yet like concrete. But I guess the first thing is I'd probably just keep baking. I really like that, honestly. Like, but right before we decided to run for office, I was actually thinking like maybe I want to like open my own bakery.
There you go.
So I might
never
revisit
know.
that.
Well, I'll tell you what, just between us, when I first met you, and I thought no chance, because this kid, he's not gonna win, because the big dog's already there. Now, when I'm driving around town, I go from all over. I live near Ozark, I come up all the way through town. Highway 65, I go up west bypass, I go from north to south, east to west, continuously. There's a lot of signs out there for you, man. A lot more than what I'm seeing for Ken McClure. I don't know, maybe you just got better signs, but that's pretty cool. I'm happy to see that, because that stuff in somebody's yard, that's making a difference. That's actually telling people they're going to vote for you. They wouldn't put up a sign normally if they weren't supportive.
Oh, no,
So,
no.
I mean, there's no way I would put up a sign for someone I didn't support.
For sure.
And I would only put up a sign if I did support. I'm not neutral. So you can't be, I wouldn't be neutral in throwing in a sign. I would have to
Right.
say, I support you, therefore that's your sign.
Yeah. If someone has a yard sign, we've touched on something that they care enough about that if you knocked on their door, they'd have a lot to tell you.
What's one thing you're going to be so relieved to not have to do when the election's over?
Honestly, campaigning, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy to do that. But if we get in, I'm just excited about like what we can do. I think there's enough people that really want to, you know, improve the relationship with the city council, and a lot of people who really would like to, you know, say that Springfield is as good as they think it is. And I just think there's a lot of potential for what we can do.
Well, say something directly into this lens about tomorrow, the election day, and what you're hoping to see happen, or anything you want to tell the voters because they're watching, and then we'll conclude our session.
Sure. All right, well, I'll give the little speech that I give to people
Great.
if they like knock on their door. I'd say, hi, my name's Marcus Aton, I'm running for mayor, and my brother is running for city council. His name's Alexander Aton, and we want to represent the people, not the special interests in this city. So we'd appreciate your support on April 6th.
Great. Do they let you get through that?
Oh yeah.
That's great. People in Springfield are a lot nicer than what this
Other
crime rate
places.
is saying. It's really not that, it's not a dangerous city, but
No.
it's not the city that it should be.
Right.
And that's what I'll say. Having lived in the area for over 40 years, it is not what it should be.
Right.
And it could be so much more. And we're looking for a brighter tomorrow.
Yeah, we are.
Regardless of the outcome tomorrow, but I do encourage you, if you are registered to vote in the city of Springfield, please get out and vote. There's school board, there's city council, mayor, and that's pretty much it for candidates, isn't it? So thanks for watching this show. It's Johnny Rooster. If you'd like to come on the show and be part of it, as an entrepreneur, nonprofit, or if you're a performing artist, it's johnnyroosterlive.com. You can go into the guest sign up form on the page. Until next time, we're with Marcus Aton, candidate for Springfield City Mayor. This is Johnny Rooster saying farewell, and we'll see you on Wednesday.